In terms of their Romanian case, it's a political hit job. It's not about what they've done because they haven't done anything wrong. This is about the fact that the United Kingdom spent over $2 billion to try to cancel Andrew and Tristan. And in their efforts to try to cancel these guys, all it did was make them 1,000 times bigger. From the very onset of these January 6th persecutions, it was never about what these men did on that day. It was about what they said, who they believed in, often the color of their skin, often their faith in Jesus Christ, and most certainly their support for President Donald Trump and their belief that the election was stolen in 2020. This is demonstrated by the fact that the punishment does not fit the crime. When you juxtapose the worst violent January 6 related crimes to what BLM and Antifa did, those guys got a slap on the wrist. Some of these guys were facing, 40, 50, 60, 70 years in jail.
Hey everyone, welcome to another Sit Down with Michael Franzese. Hope everybody is doing well. All is very good, very blessed on this end. As always, my friends, I give all the praise, honor, glory, and thanksgiving to our God for that because he deserves it. Plain and simple. He's our God. I have a very interesting guest today. You saw the video that I did with the two gentlemen that were pardoned as a result of Trump's issuing pardons for the January 6th protest. I'm not calling it an insurrection, maybe a riot, but it was a riot, in my opinion, and the evidence is now very, very clear that this was instigated by the left, by the progressives. No doubt about it, and that information is going to continue to come out. Joe McBride, a Brooklyn guy, now lives in Long Island. I was born in Brooklyn, raised in Long Island, so we have something in common, but he is the attorney for many of the people that have been pardoned. And he has some additional light to shed on this whole January 6th thing. And people, as American citizens, just listen to this with an open mind. Because remember this, whether it be Republican or Democrat, let me give you this right off the bat. Mitch McConnell, he's got to go. He's too darn old. He shouldn't be in the position that he's in. He's a Republican. He led the Senate for many years. He's got to go. He's got to go. And not because he's anti-Trump. He's not maybe all anti-Trump. He doesn't agree with anything. He's too darn old. Same way Nancy Pelosi. She's got to go. We got to have term limits on these people. Republican, Democrat, Independent, it doesn't matter. When they're doing something wrong, we have to hold them accountable. They work for us. So I want you to look at this January 6th and hear what Joe McBride has to say as an American citizen, not as an affiliate of any party, but as an American citizen. I want you to just to listen to him. And, he's a lawyer. He's a lawyer. He's not a Trump supporter or a Democrat supporter in this. He's a lawyer. And he did his job in these pardons. So I want you to listen to what he had to say. He's very educated, very learned. He speaks well. You're going to enjoy it. I've had a conversation with him, and I'm excited to talk about him. So Joe McBride is going to talk about the January 6th protest. Secondly, he just happens to be the lawyer for Andrew and Tristan Tate, two of my friends. I put it out there. I don't care if you like me or not. I know these fellas well. I'm old enough to be their dad. I know them well. I've been through the evidence in their case. I've had a lot of conversation with them. I'm into it. And I can tell you this, I believe they're innocent. In Romania, I believe they were framed. I believe that the woke section of our society and our government went after them in a big way because they are trying to teach men how to be men. I'll say this right out, and Andrew is my friend. We've discussed it. Some of the things that he says on social media is over the top, and I can understand people being upset with him. But it does not rise to the standard of criminality. You don't put criminal conduct on people because they talk on the internet or they say something that you don't like or that we don't like. You don't do it. But that's what happened here. And let me tell you something. These two men had a very tough upbringing. Very tough upbringing. And the things that they did when they were younger, they're not doing today. We all made mistakes. I made mistakes when I was younger, and I'm not doing those same things today. You get older, you get wiser, you understand. Sometimes you do things out of desperation, but then you change, you understand. And they had a very, very hard upbringing. I'm telling you that right now. I know their history to a large degree. And yes, I've had my wife and daughter in their presence with me. I've had my wife and daughter socialize with their girlfriends. And it was great. And their girlfriends were normal women. And I know for a fact that they tried to, the government, the Romanian government, as well as in UK, tried to intimidate women to testify against them, and they wouldn't do it. They said, hey, these guys didn't do anything wrong. Whatever we did willingly. They didn't do anything wrong. And if you want to indict anybody, indict the person that created OnlyFans. It's not illegal, maybe distasteful, but he created it. Nobody's going after him. People love that site. I've never been on it, but people love that site. So, you know what? And here, Joe McBride is going to give you some insight into the case. And you know what? They've been vindicated to a degree. And Joe McBride will tell you why. They'll tell you why. In Romania, the case is falling apart. There's no evidence. So I want to get into that with him. I haven't spoken about it yet, but I'm only giving you my perspective. But let's hear what Joe McBride had to say. So today you get a double whammy. You get January 6th and you get Andrew and Tristan Tate. So without any further delay, here's my special guest, Joe McBride. So Joe, it's really a pleasure to have you on. I had what I consider to be a very good sit down with two of your clients that were pardoned by President Trump last Monday, Inauguration Day. It was a pleasure to speak to them because I thought they were very honest. Obviously, I thought their stories were terrible, what they had to go through and what so many others that we know of had to go through. And, you were the attorney that arranged for the pardon for them. I think you did all the legal work involved in that in the process. And I would just love your insight into January 6th, whatever you can add to what these gentlemen have had to say. I think the truth is starting to come out more and more. Joel, I'm going to be honest with you. I am one that's been pressing for Trump to not be revengeful. This is not revenge, but to seek justice and accountability for these people that basically lied to us for 4 years, destroyed lives, and they got to be held accountable. Regardless of what the outcome is, public has to know the truth. So that's my opinion. Let me hear what you have to say.
It's a great opinion, Michael. I really appreciate you having me on. And I appreciate the courage that it takes to cover this very controversial issue, despite the fact that President Trump has indeed granted these good men these pardons. There's a substantial portion of the population that's still going to hate you for even talking about it. So thank you very much for that. I've represented dozens of January 6ers. Some of these cases have gone to trial. Many of them have pled out. I've represented people who were subpoenaed by the January 6th committee, the Trump probe, you name it. When it comes to all things January 6th, I've been doing these cases for a long time. I took my first case Ash Wednesday of 2021 when it was very unpopular as an attorney to take these cases on. Never mind get on Tucker Carlson and other mainstream media outlets and be very outspoken about it. So if it was difficult as an attorney, and if it was dangerous, which it certainly was as an attorney to do it at that point, you can imagine how much worse off it is if you were a person accused of a January 6th related crime. From the very onset of these January 6th persecutions, it was never about what these men did on that day. It was about what they said, who they believed in, often the color of their skin, often their faith in Jesus Christ, and most certainly their support for President Donald Trump and their belief that the election was stolen in 2020. This is demonstrated by the fact that the punishment does not fit the crime. When you juxtapose even the worst violent January 6th related crimes to what BLM and Antifa did, those guys got a slap on the wrist. Some of these guys were facing, 40, 50, 60, 70 years in jail, which is why many of them pled out. I know you had Ryan Nichols on, a decorated military veteran living with PTSD, Christopher Worrell, another veteran who went to jail with cancer, with lymphoma. Both of these men were tortured while they were in prison in different ways. Chris Worrell was routinely denied medical care. Ryan Nichols was placed in solitary confinement for months and months and months at a time. A man with PTSD's got no place being in there. Why did they do that? They did it to break the spirit of these men. Again, not because of what they did, but because of who they are and what they believe in.
So many of you know I've been in the wine business now for just over 2 years, and I'm happy to report that we've been very successful. People are accepting our wine, not only all over the United States, but all over the world. We're getting, people that want to have our wine in various countries, very rewarding. And our wines are from Armenia, the ancient vineyards, first vineyards in the new civilization. We're introducing it into the United States, been very successful in that. We have a couple of different categories. Our Irani is our #1 seller, terrific, you're gonna love it. We also have a pomegranate wine that you won't find anywhere else. And now we've just introduced non-alcoholic wines, and people, it's off the charts. People are loving that. If you don't drink wine and you want to participate with everybody that does, ours tastes so good. People are really enjoying it. I recommend it. So if I were you, I would go right now to our website, franzesewine.com. It'll tell you where you can buy it. We're in 9 or 10 different states now, soon to blanket the entire country. I know you're going to enjoy it. So thank you all for supporting us, those of you that are enjoying it. We always say it's a sip you can't refuse, and I guarantee if you try it, you're going to see that I'm right.
A grave, grave miscarriage of justice. It should have never happened. It did happen. It's going to take us a long time to heal. It's going to take us a long time to learn. And we have 4 years, to your point, Michael, to hold the people who wrongfully persecuted these men and wrongfully violated their constitutional rights. A lot of these guys had their doors. Ryan Nichols had his front door blown off with a tank on his front lawn. I mean, for God's sakes, right? It's got to be. We got to get justice. It's going to take time. It's going to take guts. I'm confident that President Trump will get the job done.
Well, Joe, yeah, and I certainly hope he pursues it. And I think with people like you and myself, and all the people that we can rally to make sure that he does it. But I got to ask you this: one of the things that shocked me, I forget which gentleman said it, might have been Ryan or the other fella, is that he said that Nancy Pelosi's daughter, who is a film producer, was inside the Capitol filming all of this, and that her husband, I believe she said, was outside, and it appeared that he was kind of agitating or causing people to walk into the Capitol. Now, I've maintained all along, I have no regard for Nancy Pelosi whatsoever. I know that she goes back to, her days in Baltimore. Her father was a connected guy. She seems to have picked up some of those characteristics in the way she's governed, over the years. I know she hated Trump. I know she denied Trump, along with the mayor of Washington, D.C., when he asked for the National Guard to be present. I don't believe in conspiracy theories, but I look at facts, and it certainly is reasonable from my perspective to believe that they set this whole thing up to get Trump. That's what January 16th is all about. What do you think of that?
I mean, January 6th was certainly one big entrapment operation. Trump did, in fact, call for the National Guard. He was denied the National Guard because the deep state and the powers that be is very real. It's not some cockamamie story. There's the deep administrative state full of career politicians and career placed people who stay in Washington, D.C. Generationally, who resisted Trump on that day. Nancy Pelosi was certain part of that. Mayor Muriel Bowser, part of that. General Mark Milley, part of that. All this is demonstrated by the litany of pardons that Joe Biden granted. These people are corrupt through and through. With regard to Alexandra Pelosi, Nancy Pelosi's daughter, I was leaving my office. My office was near Grand Central Station at the time, was walking down Park Avenue. I got a call on my phone, and she was like, "Listen, don't hang up." And I was like, "Who is this?" She's like, "Well, just promise not to hang up." I'm like, "Oh, okay, who is this?" And she's like, "My name is Alexandra Pelosi. I'd like to put you in a movie." And I was like, "What? Alexandra Pelosi?" So she proceeds to ask me to meet her. So I said, "You know what? I'm going to meet her. What do I got to lose?" I go down to Union Square. I meet her. She pitches me on this idea of being involved in an Axios HBO production that they're going to do on January 6th. But if I could just go a little bit easier on my clients, maybe it would be better for HBO. Yeah, that happened. Needless to say, I told her to go fly a kite. She came back for a second meeting, told her to go fly a kite again. I said, "I'm never ever going to betray my clients." The mere suggestion of it, just, we can do this, we can do that. I actually told my clients about it. One of my clients at the time actually had him, Richard Barnett was the guy who had his feet up on Pelosi's desk. Alexandra Pelosi and Richard Barnett, I had them FaceTime in my meeting. And she was like, "Oh, Richard, I'll treat you." I needed somebody to make a document that this actually happened. And he actually got on the phone with her. So they tried to pitch us on this idea. We told them it wasn't good for us. Obviously, it wasn't a good fit. HBO a couple of years later does their documentary. It's a massive hit piece on January 6th. But the conspiracy is real. These people don't stop at anything in order to achieve an objective. And Nancy Pelosi's on the record saying, "Look, this is our fault." She knows that this could have been avoided. Who was the big loser on January 6th? It was President Trump and it was Trump supporters. They created this big honeypot to get all the Trump supporters pulled into this big dragnet and to try to put the president, then President Trump, and now again President Trump, at the head of some military, domestic terrorist like cabal to ensure that he would never be reelected again. Obviously, they failed. They could not. They grossly underestimated the will of the American citizen to remain free, and they grossly underestimated the will and the consciousness of the general public to at some point say, you know what, we don't like the fact that these guys, these MAGA grandmas and grandpas who went there are being persecuted, threatened with 100 years in jail. We don't like this. At some point, people get sick of injustice. I think it all peaked at the right time, and that's why Trump got reelected. But the fix was in. He won despite the fix being in. And now we have 4 years, and we really have to be faithful stewards of the time that God has given our country again to do the right thing. Otherwise, if we get on the back end of this and we do the wrong thing, we're going to be really screwed.
No, I agree with you totally on that, Joe. Let me ask you a question. It's recently come out in the last several weeks also that the FBI had, I think, 25 informants in that crowd. And from my understanding, none of them were arrested. I think some of them entered the Capitol also. How do they explain that? What were they doing there? Why were they there? One of the specific things I asked Ryan, it was that did you hear anything from President Trump during his speech that indicated that you should go into the Capitol building? Both of those gentlemen said no. It was never thought of. It was never mentioned. I asked them if they had any preconceived notion before they were heading to the protest, peaceful protest that they thought it would be. They said no. There was no information given to them or anybody that they know of to indicate that they were going to storm the Capitol or try any kind of insurrection or anything like that. What were those FBI informants doing there?
So, President Trump said, walk over peaceful and patriotically. He didn't pull a Ray Epps and say, you got to go into the Capitol, right? What were those guys doing there? They were there to stir the pot. We blew open the agents at the Capitol theory in November of 2021. We weren't perfect with it because we were given very limited information. The government was giving us drips and drabs of discovery then. I got the first block in Ryan's case through a motion that we filed in November going into December of 2021 of asking the government, saying to the court, look, we're getting 15-minute clips, 8-minute clips. They're all out of order, hundreds of clips at a time. We want 3 hours of continuous footage to see what happened at the Lower Western Terrace. And lo and behold, once we were given that, we were able to identify multiple agents, dozens of agents. We had judges mock us in the courtroom, telling us that we were crackpots, conspiracy theorists, only to later be proven right. We published, there were several agencies there that day. We published from the local police department, the Metropolitan Police Department, DC, MPDC, had multiple teams on the ground. We published footage to my X account over a couple years ago of undercover officers dressed in the crowd as Trump supporters, goading people to go on. Go ahead, walk toward the Capitol. Go up the scaffolding, do this, do that. There were other agitators in the crowd. There were other agitators in the building, waving people in, many of them dressed in plain clothes. And what do we know historically about the FBI? They're one of the most unethical organizations on the face of the planet. They've always been corrupt. I like to say that the FBI is this stellar organization. It's not. When you look back to their coin intel program, when they infiltrated the Black Panthers and the Ku Klux Klan back in the 60s, they went into these organizations and often violated their constitutional rights of those members. But most people just looked away and said, God, it's the Klan or it's the Panthers. Who cares? But then they did it to organized crime. Then they did it to the mafia. And I'm going to threaten your wife. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. They do all this crazy stuff all the time to get people to fold. So on January 6th, members of the FBI and other agencies who were against Donald Trump did much of the same thing. They took part in very corrupt acts in order to provoke conflict between the peaceful protesters and the Capitol Police. And once the riot began to break out, they just walked away. The job was done because Donald Trump and Trump supporters would forever be the wrongdoers once the first punch was thrown. And that is essentially what happened. They wanted to convert a very large peaceful protest into a riot. When you look at all the other Trump protests, some 50-odd protests that happened in the preceding year, they were all peaceful. And the only time you saw any violence is when Antifa or some other leftist organization showed up and they were knocking out old Trump supporters online. You saw it all over the place. Trump supporters aren't an inherently violent group, never were, never will be. So you have to ask yourself what happened that day. Agents in the crowd, provocateurs in the crowd started a fight, provoked a brawl between peaceful protesters and the police in order to make it violent, in order to entrap everybody. And this is why we were saying since Jump Street, President Trump, you got to do the general pardon. What happened is wrong. Nobody was perfect on both sides, but it's all the fruit of the poisonous tree. Government entrapped everybody. Government provoked a riot. The consequences that stem forth from it, you can't. It shouldn't hold up in a normal court of law. It held up in D.C. because D.C. is a kangaroo court, and thank God President Trump absolved everybody. It's an absolute miracle, a miracle of God, because with the stroke of a pen, he made it all go away. It could have went the other way, and it didn't, and we're all very thankful.
Well, that's amazing, Joe. So I mean, it's factual that there were agitators in the crowd that were on the other side of this. They weren't Trump supporters. I mean, people need to really hear this and understand this. And I so appreciate you coming on here because you were so intimately involved in all of this, and you know the facts. Let me ask you this: security that day, I understand, was laxed. I heard there was really no security around the Capitol at all. Isn't it odd when they know that there's going to be a major protest, not a riot, but a protest, that they put in the proper security like they would do, in any other gathering like this? But I heard it was very limited.
100%. Look, if you think about the Roe v. Wade decision that was overturned back in, what was it, 22, I can't, June 24th, 23. If you look at what happened a week or so beforehand, they started putting up this black fence around the Supreme Court, black fence around the Capitol. They can get this fencing up. They can fence in most of the relevant areas in anticipation of protests within a day. There's just no question about it, right? Should they have done it? Yes. Was it a violation of protocol? Yes. When you look at the staffing, why was the Capitol Police at half staff? Right? They half staffed the Capitol Police that day. Why did they do that? They do that because they knew once the crowds came, right, they were going to say, "You're half staffed. We're under attack. You have to fight like hell against the enemy. Otherwise, we're going to lose our democracy." It was all designed to provoke a very unfair fight between the police and the protesters, who on both sides were used as bait because the higher objective was to make sure that Trump could never run again. And all you got to do is look at the numbers. Capitol was half staffed. And when the National Guard was called in, we were denied the National Guard. I mean, what else do you need to know? The truth is right there. The proof is in the pudding. And what happened afterwards, we all saw it. So again, the people who run that institution at the Capitol wanted to make sure that Donald Trump never got elected again, and they were going to use this event to make sure that their goal was achieved. But again, they failed.
Yeah, and I want my viewers to understand that Joe has done his investigation. This is not coming from any bias. This is coming from investigation, research, speaking to many of the people that were unjustly prosecuted and jailed for this. So it's not any preconceived notion that he's had on this. He's a man of integrity here, speaking and telling us the facts. Let me ask you this, Joe. The January 6th committee. Now, I knew from the start that that was going to be a nonsense committee because Nancy Pelosi put it in place. And again, I'm going to be honest with you, people can say I'm biased because of my history and research with her. That woman is just, she's not on the level, period. That's it. End of story. That woman has made more money of the backs of American with insider trading and everything else that, she should be investigated. But forget that for a moment. What insight do you have to the January 6th committee?
Look, the January 6th committee was a sham committee. It was illegally constituted to begin with. In order for it to be a legitimate committee, it has to have a certain amount of Republicans, a certain amount of Democrats. The Republicans who were selected by the Republican side of the House to be on the committee were tossed off the committee. And who did they select? Liz Cheney, Adam Kinzinger. I mean, these are the type of Republicans that were on that. These are people who hate Trump, who participated in the impeachment hearings against Trump. This was a one-sided, very dishonest attempt to proffer a false narrative to the American public, and in particular the Washington, D.C. jury pool, to make it look like January 6th was much worse and much violent than it actually was. They selectively edited, they spent millions of dollars on a production team for ABC, selectively edited video in order to proffer this very, very false narrative. And by doing so, they damaged the hearts and minds of American citizens and the actual jury pool itself. We filed motion after motion after motion saying, hey, this is improper. You can't do this. I cited the Oliver North, the overturning of Oliver North's conviction. His conviction was overturned on appeal because the appellate court said that the DC jury was cloaked in his congressional testimony. That was one guy testifying on C-SPAN in 1990. Never mind the magnitude of the production that the January 6th committee participated in. The courts didn't want to hear it. You know, they were all vertically integrated, the process there. And really, to give insult to injury, you have to understand the very big charge that was used against January 6ers was 18 USC 1512. This is an obstruction charge that was brought into law by Congress after Enron, after the members of Enron destroyed documentation in anticipation of litigation. This was used against January 6th, and we said, hey, you can't use this charge. Sure, it brings 20 years, but it doesn't apply to the facts here. None of these guys are destroying documents. We fought it in the courts. The district court and the appellate court ruled against us, but the Supreme Court vindicated us and eventually said that the 1512 charge can't be used. Why am I bringing that up in terms of the January 6th committee? The reason why I'm bringing that up is because after the January 6th committee did all of its damage, then it went ahead and destroyed all of its evidence in anticipation of Trump potentially becoming president again. If anybody's guilty of obstruction of that charge, it's these people, but they're never going to be held accountable for it. We're going to try to hold them accountable in the next 4 years, but J.D. Vance is going to have to give assurances that, you know, the mission that Trump starts, if he doesn't complete it, that J.D. Vance will see it through, because this is going to take some time to get to the bottom of these people and make sure that they're actually charged with the obstruction.
Well, let me ask you this, Joe. Is it, I would assume there's going to be some civil litigation for these men that were unjustly prosecuted and jailed. I assume that's going to happen. And wouldn't it be incumbent upon this administration to continue to find the truth of the matter here so that it could be used in civil litigation? Sure.
I mean, we obviously have a very friendly administration. It's not going to get better than this right now in terms of your point. What we're running up against is say if you were a January 6th protester who went in and you were just standing peacefully and the cops shot you, broke your leg, broke your jaw, a lot of situations like this. The federal government wrote the laws, right? Congress has passed the laws. So as you know, the federal government writes laws to protect itself, and it makes suing the federal government very hard. So in lots of these cases, and certainly with the assaults or negligence, the statute of limitations is unfortunately already run or is close to being run out. But when it comes to wrongful conviction litigation, this is where it's going to get very interesting, right? Because now you have a whole cohort of people who are technically wrongfully convicted. They've all been pardoned for one reason or another. So do we have sufficient grounds to say now that these people can sue for being wrongfully incarcerated? We're going to see. We're going to see. It's going to be a very interesting way forward. I personally became a lawyer because my own brother was wrongfully convicted. That's why I went to school to become a lawyer, to try to get him out. I have a background at the Innocence Project, specializing in DNA litigation for guys who have been in jail for too long and they get out because of DNA exonerations later on. This is much different than that, but it's going to be a whole group of people who are technically served serious time and should have never been there because they've been pardoned. So we're going to see if we can get that stuff going. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be hard. The government's always going to want to hold on to its purse strings. And we're going to see, hopefully, if we have friends in the administration, and we just have to see how it works out. Maybe there's another way we can do it outside of having to go into combat in DC courts where hostile judges are going to rule against us. Maybe there's something President Trump can do via executive order. We're beginning to explore those things now. And it's really exciting to see if maybe something can happen for these guys because they deserve to be compensated. There's no doubt about it.
Oh, absolutely. After what they went through, it's just terrible. Let me ask you this. After the pardons occurred, some of the blowback that was, that Trump received was that he pardoned some people that were violent with the cops. And my response to that was, listen, I don't think the cops understood that day what was going on. They were there. They didn't know what was going on. I don't think they were part of this scheme to entrap Trump and to make this look like an insurrection brought on by Trump. They probably didn't know that. And so they weren't at full force. They didn't have the amount of security that they should have had that day. So, I think if the police knew what was really going on, they may have come, with a different opinion to this. So I told people, don't look at it that way. Understand that this whole thing was a fraud. It was all a setup. So, there was maybe some of the cops got, hurt as a result, but it was a setup and it was caused by the other side. And that's the people that you have to hold accountable. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment, especially in favor of law enforcement. What I will say, I'm very pro police. I know you're pro police as well, right? Pro law enforcement. But what I will say is that the Metropolitan Police Department of Washington D.C. is different than most of America. D.C. as a whole sort of thinks it's better than the rest of America and sort of looks at everybody who shows up in DC at a given point in time as sort of like this invading force of tourists, never mind a bunch of invading insurrectionists. So when they were given marching orders that day, they were really told to stomp out their fellow citizens. Some of those guys were put in very unfair positions. Other parts of those guys relished in the opportunity. So just like in any other job in the world, you have good and you have bad on the police force, right? So not all violence is criminal. Think about Kyle Rittenhouse. Think about Daniel Penny, right? The law gives you a justification to use legal violence if your life is in danger or if the lives of others are in danger, and you can take appropriate action. Kyle Rittenhouse, life was in danger. He defended himself with a weapon and he walked because the law supported what he did, even though it was violent. Daniel Penny on the train, guy gets on, threatens everybody. He takes action, right? The guy winds up dying. It's very unfortunate. He walks because the law says that not all violence is criminal. So when you look at January 6th, and if you're Chris the mailman and Cindy the teacher and Mike the plumber and Joe the cop, and you're standing there and you're there with your wife, or you see all elderly people there and the cops are macing them and beating them, you say, hey, officer, don't do that. That person didn't do anything wrong. And then once they push the grandma a second time or the grandpa a third time, good men take action. And even if that action requires violence between them and the cops, better for them to take action on the parts of people who are being illegally brutalized than for them to go home on their night, to go home that night and put their head down on their pillow and say, hey, I could have done something for that person, but I didn't. Good men, strong men cannot put their heads down on their pillow at night knowing that they let violence to innocent people happen and they did nothing about it. And most of the guys who went there, ex-military, ex-cops, patriotic, never had really any problems with law enforcement before. Many of them members of law enforcement themselves, they took action because they could not believe the type of behavior that they saw coming from law enforcement against innocent protesters. And that's what makes that situation very unique. So you just can't say, oh, somebody was violent, so that's it. Look, if you were standing there next to your mother and the cops maced your mother, you better believe you're going to act. So, it's got to be looked at within the context of that day and what happened. Ugly situation. Good men don't sit around and do nothing when women are getting the crap kicked out of them.
Great explanation, Joe. And again, I think the cops were at a disadvantage because they were probably told there's going to be an insurrection, be prepared for it. They probably went in there with that mindset and not realizing that it was their side that was setting this up, alleged side.
I agree.
But
I agree.
yeah, that probably would happen. You mentioned something. I just want to run it by you. You said you're part of the Innocence Project.
I started as a legal intern with the Innocence Project. It was my second year of law school, and then always It was a year and a half or so of law school, and then from there I went to become a public defender with the Legal Aid Society in Manhattan. That's where I started my career, and I went to the Innocence Project because my own brother was wrongfully convicted of a crime, threatened with 125 years of incarceration, and copped out to a plea of 15 years in jail. Outside of the presence of meaningful counsel, and my brother's is paranoid schizophrenic, right? This is my adopted brother, was born addicted to drugs and alcohol, never had a chance in life. And he didn't do anything wrong. The cops threatened him. He was like, oh, I better sign this piece of paper. And before I knew it, my own brother was getting dragged away. I applied to school, went to John Jay College of Criminal Justice, and then I went to Cardozo Law for the specific purpose of getting into the Innocence Project to see if I could help get my brother out. I didn't know that they only took DNA cases. My brother's case wasn't DNA based, but that's sort of the genesis of how I got involved in the legal process. And so I have some experience there. And then I had 5 years as a public defender before I went, I started my own firm in 2019. Yeah, I never planned on becoming a lawyer. My mother always told me when I was a kid, you should become a lawyer with that mouth. But it wasn't until my brother got locked up that I said that I had to do something.
See, our mothers are always wise. Well, I got to tell you this. This is somewhat popular, somewhat unpopular, but I am dead set against the death penalty in this country. And the reason I said that, and listen, there are some heinous crimes, and you look at him, and me being a former street guy, yeah, I want to kill this guy. He doesn't deserve to live. But, the system isn't made for one person, it's made for all of us. And I know for a fact, or we all know for a fact, that so many people on death row were exonerated because of DNA evidence. And if that DNA evidence didn't come forward, or we didn't have that technology, these people would have been put to death wrongly. And in a civilized nation, you can't even execute one person. If you execute one innocent person from the government, then the whole system is bad. So I tell people, because of that, listen, the government does sometimes prosecute people wrongfully. They do send people to jail. They do frame people. No question about it. My dad was framed, got a 50-year prison sentence. No question about it. I'll take that to my grave. I investigated that case thoroughly. Every witness recanted their testimony. We gave them lie detector tests, proved they lied at the trial. We couldn't get the conviction overturned. All right, my dad was a mob guy. We kind of, sometimes we look the other way. Well, he got away with a lot of stuff. But that's not true of a lot of innocent people that have been wrongly convicted and sentenced to death. So we just can't have it. And I tell people, listen, life in prison, in solitary is no walk in the park. So don't think that you're giving somebody a real break when you're putting them in prison forever and they're going to live mostly in solitary. But, I just thought that I'd bring that up because thank God for DNA technology because it saved innocent lives.
Yeah, look, I join you in your condemnation of the death penalty. I'm a staunchly pro-life person. I can't argue for, a pro-life position at the beginning of life and say life begins at conception and then argue for an unnatural death. I just don't think it's an appropriate measure. Death penalty is often, and it's always overdoing it. That ultimate choice between life and death is God's alone, absent exigent circumstances or war or having to defend yourself, something like that. So when you have the ability to say this is a non-emergency situation, then death isn't absolutely necessary. You got to choose life. You got to choose life also because of the fact that the justice system is deeply flawed. The innocent men are sent to jail all the time. There you have corrupt organizations like the FBI, and you have corrupt police forces as well. It's not an indictment of them all, but there are a lot of bad guys out there setting people up, and it's very, very wrong. It should never, ever happen. I have several good friends. One good example is my friend Marty Tankliff. He was exonerated. He was on Richard Barnett's case with me as co-counsel, which is amazing. Marty did 18 and a half years in Clinton. This is a little Jewish guy from the North Shore of Long Island, was convicted of murdering his mother and his father. So not only did he lose both his parents, he went to jail for it, did 18 and a half years, only to get exonerated later on through DNA evidence, right? Found out it wasn't him. The other guy confessed. He came out, sued, became a multimillionaire. Then he became a lawyer, and now he's a very good lawyer, doing all types of wrongful conviction work all the time. But if he was in a jurisdiction where the death penalty was prevalent, they would have whacked him. He would have been dead a long time ago, despite the fact that he was innocent. And look at the beautiful turnaround, right? I mean, you want to talk about the mystery of the cross, redemptive suffering. I mean, this is a guy who went in and he was dead and then somehow was resurrected back to life, and now he does all this good work. And the only reason he was able to do it is because the death penalty did not exist in New York State. Had it existed, he would have been done for. So I support your point 100%.
Well, that's great, Joe. And listen, I want to thank you for all the work that you've done on behalf of these innocent people that were exonerated. And I hope you continue to do that. Let's keep pushing the administration to get to the truth and hold the right people accountable for this. I think, it has to be done. It has to be done, in my opinion. I want to bring one thing up. You're a Brooklyn guy. I'm a Brooklyn guy. I see that you're a fighter. We don't back down, we fight. And I want some people to understand Trump is a New York guy. His resilience and his determination and his fighting back, it's kind of inbred in many of us. So, some people take it the wrong way, that it's arrogance or whatever it might be, but I get it. I understand it. I'm sure you do too. And thank God he's had that resilience, and look where it's got him. And I think that he's going to straighten out this country over the next 4 years. And to your point, earlier, yeah, hopefully if America continues to see that, and God bless the American citizens that really had their eyes opened and realized that they were being lied to and gaslit and everything else, and turned to Trump. Hopefully, if he does what he says he's going to do, and it certainly looks like that after the first few days of administration, that the torch be handled to Vance or whoever else is going to take his place, and we get 4 more years of good things happening in this country and the entire. Because when America is weak, we see what happens in the world. When America is strong, then the world is normally at peace, and that's what we hope for. I want to switch gears a little bit. You happen to represent two very good friends of mine, two young men. I consider them young men. I'm twice their age. I'm old enough to be their father, but Andrew and Tristan Tate. I've got to know them well. My family's got to know them well over the past year and a half. I really like the boys. Spent time in Romania with them, and we communicate all the time. And they were excited when I didn't know that you were their attorney. We never discussed it. But when I told them you were coming on, they had nothing but good things to say about you. And, I'm hoping, listen, I would say this. Andrew, sometimes I tell him, Andrew, you got to kind of tone it down on social media a little bit. Tone
Good
it
luck.
down, because you're not ingratiating yourself with certain people, but I understand, he's got that in him. But the bottom line, the charges in Romania are nonsense. I looked at it, I reviewed it, I discussed it. We know what's happening with them there. And I think you had to do with some of their legal issues here. So I just want to hear what your take is on them.
Sure. So, I mean, talk about, I love these guys to death. Like you just said, these guys are warriors. I come from the same background. You come from a tough New York street background. And when you have that fighter mentality, when there's no give, when there's no surrender in you, that's a very, very powerful and beautiful thing, especially in this world. And when you combine that with the truth, when you have the truth and the assurance that God is with you, like, look, I didn't do anything wrong. I'm absolutely innocent here. To just no way God is going to let me hang out to dry. It becomes a very, very powerful thing. And in terms of their Romanian case, it's a political hit job. It's not about what they've done because they haven't done anything wrong. This is about the fact that the United Kingdom spent over $2 billion to try to cancel Andrew and Tristan. And in their efforts to try to cancel these guys, all it did was make them 1,000 times bigger. So when they get out to Romania, they're essentially set up, and it's just ridiculous allegations about a couple people who went there. I have to be careful what I say because we're litigating things all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
There for 6 days and accusing these guys of human trafficking. Not only is it false, right? We in 2023 filed a defamation lawsuit in Florida. And what we were able to do with that defamation lawsuit, which is now, we just survived an appeal against our latest ruling. So we're resuming discovery in that case. And that case is going to go to trial in Palm Beach this September, which is going to be absolutely fantastic. If you thought that the Johnny Depp case was something, this is going to be next level in terms of a defamation case. And why am I saying that? Well, the Romanian court, because the Romanian court and the rules of Romania are absolutely nuts when you compare it to the American system. The Romanian prosecutor upon a unilateral finding of reasonable suspicion with no other evidence other than his opinion, was able to have these guys indicted, put them on house arrest, throw them in jail, without any evidence being presented to the court. They were able to bury this evidence in the Romanian court for almost 2 years while their prosecutor worked on the file. The prosecutor has immense power over there. So what we did is we sued their wrongful accusers in 2023 in a Florida court of law, and we were able to publish the allegations, the truth of what actually happened in Romania, to demonstrate not only are these guys, is that case false, this arises to the level of defamation, tortious interference with a business relationship, conspiracy, a bunch of other stuff, and we published it to the Florida docket. The world was able to see for the first time what really happened. And as soon as that took place, the Romanian judges, the Romanian system got to see what actually happened for the first time. And the Romanian court took a look at the file for the first time. And as soon as they actually took a look at the file, all of a sudden they're out of jail. They're off of house arrest. Their first indictment is gone away now. The human trafficking allegations are gone in Romania, and now it's only what's left. It's like this second B-rated indictment against them that's soon going to be going as well. So to make a long story very short, all the allegations against them with regard to rape, human trafficking, all these other horrible crimes, they've been 100% false since day one. We're proving that in the Romanian court. We're also going to prove that in the Florida court. We're suing for defamation. We have a great judge. We have a great Florida system out there, a good jury pool. I believe that we're going to get a fair trial, and we'll be able to prove the facts overwhelmingly that constitute that these guys were defamed, and we'll be able to have them have a civil recovery over there. They'll be able to clear their names once and for all and put this absolute nonsense behind them. But just like the January Sixers, who after years of the process being the punishment have been exonerated, these guys will be exonerated too, but the damage will have been done, right? The deep state and the powers that be know that they can weaponize the system against people to punish them in violation of their rights. And that is always what this has been about when it comes to Andrew and Tristan Tate.
I know you're enjoying this video, but I want to take 30 seconds to really tell you something that's very, very important to me and I think will be a big benefit to you. Recently, myself and my team, we've created a platform, a family, a community where people can come together and get some mentorship, advice, encouragement, maybe some business advice that you might need, something in your personal life. You know, I found it so important. People want to be part of something, part of a community, part of a family. It's been my mindset my entire life. And so many people come to me asking me for advice and mentorship and, you know, how do you overcome obstacles and challenges that you're facing. I want you to jump onto this link right now and take a look at it. It's an offer that you shouldn't refuse, and I say that sincerely, and it's not just a quip with me. I mean it from the bottom of my heart. Jump on this thing. I think it's something that you're going to want to be part of. I really mean that. You want a real piece of me? You want to be involved? You want to hear me out? You want to get mentored, maybe even on a one-to-one basis at times? This is something that you should be involved in. So jump on the link right now. Take a few minutes to look at it, and let's get back to the video. Yeah, I totally agree. From everything that I've seen over there, I know they were coercing some of the women to try to say, they were scaring them, trying to make the accusation of human trafficking, and they wouldn't do it. They wouldn't fall for it, you know? So, I mean, it's terrible what these people can do. You know, I've said this all the time. The two most dangerous things that can happen in any country, especially in a constitutional republic like we have here, a democracy, is number one, when you weaponize the Department of Justice, the FBI, federal agencies, state agencies to go after your political enemies. Very dangerous. They've done it with Trump and so many others. They've done it with January 6 people. Secondly, when the media is complicit in covering it up. And that's what happened here in the United States for the past several years. That's what happened with Andrew and Tristan. Same exact thing, you know. They weaponized the government. The media was complicit. I tried to tell people came back to me and said, you know, Michael, you didn't see what they said on social media. I said, people, what you say on social media doesn't necessarily rise to the standard of criminality. You don't indict people because they say something that you don't like on social media. You have to have evidence. You have to have facts. And they don't exist when it comes to Andrew and Tristan. I've seen it. You've just, you know, related again. You're certainly more up on it than I am. But I really do hope that these two young men get vindicated and get vindicated to the extent where they get everything back. I mean, they've taken so much of their property and their money and their cars and everything else. It's absolutely horrible what these people do.
It really is. They've taken their time, they've taken their money, they've taken their talents, they've taken their treasures, and it's another gross miscarriage of justice. It's very, very unfortunate when you look at the time leading up to how Andrew and Tristan arrived on the scene. Right, it's just been this attack on men for 40 years all over the world, and it's intensifying. It's the attack on the family, it's the attack on men, it's the attack on traditional values. You can't even say that you're a straight man anymore, and a boy isn't a girl, and a girl isn't a boy, and you can't do this, and you're going to go to jail for misgendering somebody. And what they represent is a correction in the free marketplace of ideas. These people overplayed their hand, and what did they think was going to happen? Somebody was going to step into the gap. Somebody was going to stand up and say, hey, I am a man, I am strong, I am tall, I am proud. I'm not going to apologize for having testosterone in my body. I'm not going to apologize for loving my country. I'm not going to apologize for saying a man is a man, as a woman is a woman, and I want to have a wife and a family. And you can, young men, you can be strong if you take care of your mind and believe in God and take care of your body. There's no limitation on what you can do out there. Of course, young men are going to resonate to this. You've been trying to psychologically castrate them for the past 40 years. So they represent, they're very heroic in what they've done. They stepped up during very dangerous and unpopular times, and they said, look, this is who we are, and we're going to stand up for the male gender and for the male race before it's wiped from the face of the earth. And thank God for men like them. And again, they're being punished not because of anything that they've done, because they haven't done anything bad. Have they said some wild stuff? Sure. When you look at the things they said 10 years ago, is it different than the stuff that they're saying now? It's very different, you know? And if you looked at the stuff I said, I'm 46 years old. If you looked at some of the stuff I said when I was 18, 19, 20, it's going to be a lot more wild than anything that's coming out of my mouth now, because a part of a man is a man grows up. And as they grow up, you know, they've changed some of the things that they're saying. But when it comes to Andrew and Tristan, they're always going to push the envelope on freedom of expression, on freedom of thought, on freedom of speech. And if you tell Andrew that he can't say it, and if the rule book says that he can say it, not only is he going to say it, he's going to say it 1,000 times louder to prove a point that the laws and the Constitution of whatever country he's in supports the idea that he can say whatever he wants and not go to jail for it, so long as he does not cross the threshold of criminality. And it's like you said, Michael, you can hate what somebody says, but you don't get to put them in jail because of it.
Exactly. You know, and I don't know, if you know what happened to me, but after I was with Andrew and Tristan, my wife and my daughter were there. And by the way, they interacted with their girlfriends at that time. Everything was just great and normal, right? All this nonsense that they're saying, not true. But I left there, I had a speaking tour in the United Kingdom. Well, we posted one picture on social media. Somebody posted of all of us together. Do you know that when I arrived in the United Kingdom, one of the women in Parliament started this huge thing against me. She went to every venue, and told them that if they held my tour, my speaking event, that they would take their business license away. And this was at 13 different venues. Yes. They also lied, and they said that I was going to be there and that Andrew was going to appear on video behind me, and that we were going to try to incite young men and say the wrong thing. Totally preposterous, absolute lie. None of it was true. They put me through hell. We had to change venues within 2 days of my appearance, after those venues being contracted for months. It was unbelievable what they put me through. As a matter of fact, the woman that was led this charge, they talked about it in Parliament. The woman that led the charge, I offered to meet her. You know, there's some square in, I forget which city it's in, where you go and you sit with Parliament members, and they talk to you, you talk to them if you have a grievance. Well, I challenged her. I said, you're absolutely making false statements here, but let's go in front of the public and let's debate it, because everything you're saying is wrong. Well, she wouldn't come, right? She didn't show up. But that's the extent that they went to really try to harm these young men. Really. And, it's unbelievable. And, I told people, why are so many young men following them? Because society has been putting it in men's heads that if you act like men, it's demeaning to women. And I said, no, it's not demeaning to women. It's a benefit to women when you act like a man, because a man does the right thing to their wife, to their children, to women. I was brought up, look, my father was a mob guy. But my father told me, respect women and children, treat them the right way. I was taught that way. And most of the guys that I knew that did that. Look, there's exceptions to every rule. But, we respected our families. We respected our neighborhoods and our communities. And some people just don't get it. But young men are just hungry, to be told the right thing. And Andrew and Tristan delivered that to them. And the wrong people got offended by that. And that's why they're having all the trouble. So, it's a pleasure to speak to you because I've gotten some blowback. I don't care. I speak with my mind. And if I support something, I support it. Nobody's going to change my mind. But I really appreciate you coming on, even in support of them, so that people understand what's really going on here. And maybe now that we have a reset in this country, people will start to say, you know what? We might have believed that. We were afraid to believe it before, say anything about it before, but now we can express ourselves. And I think we're seeing that with the DEI abolishment movement and all this kind of stuff that's happening. So I really appreciate you coming on, Joe. I really do. And listen, if they get vindicated in Romania soon and they can leave the country, Andrew says he's coming straight to California. So I'm inviting you to come out with him and dinner on me. We're going to have celebration. We're going to open up a few bottles of Franzese wine. And we're going to have a huge celebration in all of your honor for doing the right job.
Well, I look forward to that, Michael. Thank you so much.
And I come back to New York normally several times a year. So next time I'm back, I'm gonna give you a call. Maybe we'll get together, go to lunch. I'd love to sit down with you.
Oh yeah, that would be great. Anytime. I really look forward to it. And New York, for all of its communist affiliations and all this stuff, still one of the greatest places around. Great people, and obviously, some of the best food you could ever hope bite into. I look forward to it.
No doubt. And listen, you have an open invitation anytime you want to express anything. If I could be of assistance with my platform, you're welcome to come on, whether it be January 6th or the Tates or anything else. And I sincerely mean that. It was really a pleasure sitting and talking with you. I feel like, we're
No doubt about it. No doubt about it, Michael. I really appreciate it. And I touched on this a little bit before we got on the air, but let me just say, you're somebody whose life story is really amazing. It's a wonderful and very strong example of what a man can do once Jesus changes his heart and changes his mind. You got a beautiful family, you have a beautiful ministry, a beautiful show, and just I'm glad to be a part of it. A lot of people respect you. I deeply respect you, and I look forward to being able to break bread and have a great glass of wine and give all the glory to God.
Well, that's a deal, Joe. And I'm going to end it with, I am, Jesus Christ is not only my Savior, he's my hero in life. And there's no question about it. If he didn't find a different plan and purpose for my life, I'd either be dead or in prison for the rest of my life. I owe it all to him. I don't take any credit for it. I owe it to my beautiful wife who supported me for 40 years through all the challenges and headaches that I brought to her. She's been wonderful, and just, surrounding myself with the right people, Joe. That's what it's all about. They keep you straight, and your love for the Lord, just let you do the right thing. And that's what it's all about. So God bless you, my friend. Thank you very much. And we will definitely be in touch in the future. What went on January 6th, it was just terrible. To put innocent people like that in harm's way, to put innocent people in prison, to really scar them for the rest of their lives in a way, to disrupt their families like they did. I mean, it's just terrible. It's really terrible. And I hope you listen to Joe McBride as an American citizen, not as a Democrat, not as a Republican, but you put all that bias aside, whichever way it goes for you, and just listen to what the man said. Listen to it again. What they did on January 6th, what the left did on January 6th, led by Nancy Pelosi, she should be out of office. She should be investigated. She should be held accountable for what she did because she caused an insurrection. She did. There's no question. And the mayor went along with it. And the police, I said it during the video, I want to say it again. The police, give them a break too. Yeah, they were assaulted. But they went there, I can almost guarantee it, being told that, hey, this is going to be a protest. This is going to be an insurrection. Be on your guard. These people are going to come after you. That's what these police were probably told. They were gaslit at that point. And there wasn't enough of them to begin with. Remember, the National Guard was refused. That was Trump's request. refused. Nancy Pelosi refused it. The mayor refused it. They didn't have enough security. They didn't put security around the Capitol. Come on. If it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a duck. View this as an American citizen, please. I think what Joe McBride had to say in that regard, very valuable. And I do hope that there are some lawsuits here. But most of all, I hope that the people that caused this are investigated, a legitimate investigation now by the House or the Senate or wherever it has to go. And these people, Nancy Pelosi in lead, is held accountable for this horrible act that she pulled. Terrible, absolutely terrible. Now let's switch to Andrew Tate. You heard what Joe McBride had to say. Been vindicated. The Romanian court, there's no evidence here. They told the prosecutors, you better come back and show some evidence or this case is going away. And I talked to Andrew quite a bit. We text each other back and forth. And he's just waiting patiently to see that this thing falls apart. And he said the first thing that he's going to do is come to America. And I hope that he does. Because now America, there's a reset here. He's not going to be looked at the same way he was looked at before under the Biden administration, under the Obama administration. Look, like I said, and Andrew, if you're listening, he knows that. Some of the things, this is how Andrew expresses himself. He goes over the top. It's been a successful journey for him in that regard because a lot of young men were clamoring to be men. They didn't want this woke nonsense. They didn't want to wear skirts. They didn't want females, to be their boss. I'm just sorry. And please understand this. If there's any ladies watching in this, for all you men, when men are behaving like men, it's a benefit to women. It's not a detriment. And it's not demeaning to women in any way. It's a benefit to women. When men act like men and they have the characteristics of men, they're protective. They're providers, okay? And so on and on and on and on. Please believe me. So Andrew and Tristan Tate, I hope you listen to what this lawyer had to say. All this nonsense started in the UK. How woke is the UK? I mean, they came after me for just being a friend with Andrew Tate. And come on, I'm married 40 years. I'm anything but a misogynist. They labeled me a misogynist. I've got 5 daughters. So this woke nonsense against Andrew and Tristan Tate started there. Then the Romanian court, it was probably moved along by people here in America that were woke. And they tried to put these guys in prison and destroy their lives. And they've given them hell for the past 3 years. We're not supposed to do that. I'm sorry, you don't go after innocent people because they disagree with your agenda, especially when it's a woke agenda. So, vindication. January 6th, I've maintained all along that insurrection was caused by the left. And Andrew and Tristan Tate, I've maintained all along that they were innocent of these nonsense charges. And now it's coming to pass. And here's the lawyer that filled you in on what was happening. So, my friends, that's it. Again, view this video as an American citizen and come to the conclusion that you come to based upon information that was provided to you by Joe McBride. He's a great guy, I got news for you. I'd love him to give me a pardon. I mean, my last case was 30 years ago. I've transformed my life through the blood of Jesus Christ. Thank God for the Lord, who had a different plan and purpose for me. I don't need a pardon, but might be nice to have. Who knows, I don't know. I mean, it just popped into my head, and who knows what will happen. But anyway, that's it. Hope you enjoyed this. My friends, how do I always leave you? Be safe. Be healthy. God bless each and every one of you and your families, communities, neighborhoods. God bless this new administration. God bless America. See you next time.